All right. So, Colin, Joe, and Lou, I would like for you to introduce yourself. After my story, I would like for each of you to introduce yourself with just telling the audience what you believe your biggest contribution has been to this field and the things that make you incredibly proud, and share a little bit of your philosophy and what drove you to make this contribution. And I'm going to pick the order. Lou, can we start with you, and then Joe, and then Colin?
I knew you'd pick Lou because he's the person that you like the most, because Richard Branson was clearly a little bit higher on the list, but
most handsome. And
yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
sorry, guys. I'm blushing. I'm blushing. All right, Lou, can you get your microphone just unmuted?
Yes, I think I'm unmuted.
yes,
There we go.
Fantastic. First of all, I think the biggest contribution for me has been the deep friendships with Joe, Colin, and Jim Gilmore. When we first started talking about this decades ago, people thought we were smoking the drapes. And I really respect the friendship that we've had and the journey that we've been on. I'd also really feel that the contribution is what has spread, and the people that have helped me along the way. Stephen Heckel, who I wrote first article with, Dr. Jerry Zaltman at the Harvard Business School, Dr. Kathy Latour at Cornell, Dr. Len Berry, who was sort of the father of service quality. My own son, Jonathan, my colleagues over the years at EE, Chris Daffy, Mike Wittenstein, the people at Forrester, CXPA, Bruce Temkin, Jeannie Bliss, Chantel, and the hundreds of thousands of people advancing the importance of experience. And this is a moment to truly celebrate. So I want to express my gratitude to each and every one of you. I think that the thing that was in the seminal article that Steve and I wrote as a Marketing Science Institute paper was the construct that you cannot not have an experience, that it's a question of how managed or haphazard that experience is. And that led to this critical construct that Steve and I had begun to, and Steve was my co-author in that very first article. And what was really fascinating was we began to look at the world customer back, and said organizations need to look at the world customer back versus company out. And often that's referred to as looking inside out now and looking outside in. But I believe that we are at a very, very exciting time in the world of experience management. This is probably the most pivotal moment in the advancement of that work as a result of COVID and our sensitivity to what experiences are like as we go through life. So what we cause people to feel about themselves in an experience is the ultimate value that we deliver, which in turn affects how they think about the brand. And I think that unfortunately, as we look at the industrial age and the way that mindset and education took place, it was contrary to what Peter Drucker said, which was the purpose of a business is to create value and the reward is profit. And I think that it was just the awareness that experiences can be managed to create this emotional bond with customers.
Thank you, Lou. All right, so Joe, let's move to you. Joe, I think we've lost your sound.
Oh, sorry, there we go. I was going to say, I appreciate what Lou had to say. I met him through Steve Hackle that he mentioned. I can still remember the first presentation I heard from him back in, I don't know, late 94, early 95 at the IBM Advanced Business Institute. And it you just dovetailed perfectly with what I had discovered about the experience economy. So I'll say that the biggest contribution is really to understand that experiences are a distinct economic offering. That experiences are not just better services. It's not just being nice and easy and convenient, as so many people interpret CX to be, which is the antithesis of a true distinctive experience, which has to be memorable and has to be personal, has to engage people inside, has to get them to value the time that they spend with you as a company. You know, where services are time well saved, experiences are time well spent. And that's the thing to understand is what business are you really in? Understand that the possibility exists there to get into the staging experience where people value the time they spend with you. They want to spend more time with you. And that is, that is what experiences are really all about.
Excellent. Colin.
Yeah, so I think for me, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I've probably contributed over the years has been the well, first of all, being able to speak English by the sounds of it. What's the word I'm looking for? To actually go over and implement, how to implement it. So I don't know if Joe knows this, but I read Joe's book or Joe and Jim's book, and I thought, great concept, but how in the hell do I do this? So
operationalize it.
That's it. I should have you as my ghostwriter, mate. So how do you totally buy into the concept? But at the time I was working at British Telecom, and I thought, totally understand the concept, but bloody hell, how in the hell do you do that then? And we spent 3 years trying to do stuff and implement it and everything else. And we found things of what to do and what not to do. So the key issue becomes great concept. How in the hell do I do it? How do I do it in a business? And moreover, one of the biggest questions we've always struggled with has been, how do I do this in a legacy organization? So it's okay if you're a new startup and you can start things afresh, but when you've got an organization that's 50, 60 years old, then how do you do it? So that's one thing, is the operationalization of it. Tried to say it again, but couldn't do it. The second part for me has been, again, what Lou was talking about, which was the emotional and the customer behavioral stuff, which again, Lou has led on. You know, all too often, and still today, sadly, people think of a customer experience as more of a rational thing, as opposed to an emotional, psychological, subconscious thing, and that becomes an issue. And I think the last thing I would mention is, and this will be a theme from me throughout this session, is just a bit about what drives value. So you know, it was interesting on the votes that people made, the ROI came bottom, and I think, to be honest with you, that's part of the problem. The ROI comes bottom from people who are this audience, who are, you know, we've all bought into the subject, otherwise you probably wouldn't be here. But actually, CEOs, CFOs, the thing that they do this for is ROI. You know, they're not doing this for a laugh. They want a return. So, you know, how do you get that return? And I think that that's something that we bang on ceaselessly about. And therefore, to answer your question, hopefully brought that conversation into the whole game as well.
Absolutely. And I think, Colin, so many people fear the ROI discussion.
Yeah.
And we lose track that it's the CFO's job to ask the questions about ROI. And I think a lot of the shying away and a lot of the over focusing on ROI comes from just deep-seated fear around taking a chance and, you know, sometimes getting it wrong, which leads me to my next question. I think we're here to celebrate you and the contribution you made, but we're also here to, you know, discuss some of the failures. I think my biggest learning in being an apprentice to yourselves and you know, many other mentors is learning how to fail with elegance and how to fail fast and just get back on the horse and just keep going. So my next question to you is, you know, where did you get it wrong? You know, maybe share a little story or an anecdote of, you know, where you got it wrong, where you failed.
How long have you got?
So Colin, let's start with you, and then we go to Joe, and then Lou.
All right. So I think the biggest thing that where I've failed over the years has been to think that people are in the same mindset that I am. So let me set the scene for you, because this sums it up for me. I was doing a presentation to a German insurance company on why they should be looking at customer experience and how evoking emotions drive value. So this is a German insurance company to a group of actuaries. And rightly so, they said to me, Colin, prove to me that this stuff works. Where's the evidence? And basically, this was back in 2005. I didn't have the evidence, okay? And I just said, well, I think it's a good thing, and you know, blah, 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 blah. And it made me realize, what it made me realize is I have religion, okay? I believe in this stuff, and I cannot understand how nobody would see that this is the right thing to do, okay? So, I just think to myself, you're clearly not intelligent enough to get it. I don't really think that, but you know, I don't see how you don't understand this. And I guess that what I realized over the years was I've got to prove it. So I can't just rely on the fact that someone's going to get this. I've literally got to get into the numbers and show people the science and the algorithm and the statistics that prove that this stuff works. Because the people, as you said, Chantel, that have got the money or the hand on the purse strings are the CFOs, and they rightly ask you about ROI. And that's where literally from that moment forward, we shifted our attention to, okay, we now need to evidence how this works and come up with what drives value for them.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Colin. Joe, let's hear from you.
I have the same affliction as Colin. It's like I don't see how you can't get this, you know. And I didn't go the data route. What I do is one is to show shining exemplars of what's going on, and then but also it's frameworks. You know, Jim Gilmore and I often joke that we should have named the firm Frameworks Are Us, because we develop frameworks that first describe what's happening, then prescribe what companies can do about it. And so my intention is to show you why this is the most logical thing in the world, to make, you know, to draw you along a case using frameworks and exemplars to say that this is the most logical thing in the world to get the light bulb to come on, to get people to get it. It doesn't mean that they won't have to figure out what the ROI is and that sort of thing, but it means that you've got to sort of create that acknowledgement in their head, with, you know, in their mind, where they're shaking their head saying, yeah, okay, I get this. And now, but you know, related to what Colin said too, is one of my what I always hated was okay, you know, that sounds all very innovative and that sort of thing. Well, who else has done this? You know, to which I respond, well, if it's innovative, then nobody else has done it, right? Who else in our industry has done it? Well, if nobody else has done it, then this is a perfect opportunity for you to go to head. So many companies and so many executives are afraid to be the first one out there, not recognizing that's what innovation is all about. And as you said, Chantel, you have to be open to failing. You do need to prototype things. You need to pilot things. You need to figure it out. You never know what your experience is going to be like, no matter how much time you put into design, until you get a real live human being there experiencing it. And only then will you truly know. I mean, I always tell companies you got to save at least 20% of your budget for after you do it, so that you can then go around and fix the things because you just don't know how humans are going to react. Which is, and I'll mention this with Lou, one of the things I loved in his book, I've always had editors accuse me of making up words every time I publish a book, and they always say, well, that's not a word, and I say, well, it is now, and the one that I always assumed, Lou, that you made up was humanics, right? I love that contrast of humanics and mechanics, and it's I don't know if there's an equivalent for the customer until that human customer gets in and works with the things that you've set up, the mechanics, as well as the people in there, and give them the wherewithal to stage that great experience. You don't really know what you have.
Amazing. Thanks, Joe. And I absolutely love the mechanics to humanics. After I found Lou's article, we actually put together a workshop for an executive team that was called Mechanics to Humanics. And we put them in these blue overalls, and we took them to a camp where they had to build boats and do all kinds of interesting things. So thanks, Lou, for that. Lou, so let's hear from you.
Joe, I couldn't agree more that a new lexicon is what's necessary to a great degree, with the creation of words that are different and distinctive, so there isn't confusion. I believe there's a lot of confusion and cloudiness in the way that people perceive. There's a lot of discussion and perhaps not the depth of understanding of how different an experience economy is versus the industrial age. I couldn't agree more. And often I'm challenged on, my God, you create more words, but I think we need a new lexicon to move out of the industrial age and into the age of the experience economy. The primary philosophy that I work with is these constructs around clue consciousness, that we're driven by unconscious processing of clues and signals. And we make decisions emotionally and unconsciously, and then create rationalized intellectual alibis for the decisions that we've made. And these clues affect our emotions. These clues affect emotions that shape our attitudes and drive our behaviors. And what we've always looked at in traditional, what I would call experience 1.0, is the world of attitude and behavior. And what we need to begin to understand is emotions, and we need to understand the clues and signals that stimulate those emotions. And it's really that critical aspect that creates the real power in experience management. It's about building systems that align the clues and signals, and it goes well beyond process improvement. And I think that there's often a rut of beginning to think that just process improvement and defect elimination is what experience management is about. And I think it was either Joe or Colin that talked about legacy systems in organizations that have built up these calluses over the years. But I think that this thinking and the acculturation of being customer driven, not customer centric only, but customer driven, being inside the mind and heart and soul of the customer in terms of what they don't even know they know about how they want to feel in an experience. And that often we get caught up in wondering how they feel about us as a company versus how do we cause them to feel about themselves, which in turn is how they ultimately feel about the brand.
Absolutely, and there was a beautiful comment in the chat saying we hire humanics and then we turn them into mechanics, and I think the the ability to design. Madely, my colleague, she always, sometimes we cry, over clients not, wanting to implement our ideas. And Madely asked me once, she said, when is it going to stop hurting? And I said, I hope never, because I think getting emotionally more comfortable, that turns you into a good designer. And I think the leaders that we work with that can care openly and kind of sit with the messiness of emotions, those are the leaders that can embark on these transformations. So for the next question, if we now, we've kind of looked into the past, if we look into the future, what do you see coming next? We've been on a kind of an evolution of customer experience. We've got people across the world practicing your frameworks, your methods, a variety of frameworks and methods. What do you think is next? Is it relevant? What are we going to see next? And Colin, can we start with you? Just, is CX nearing its end of its shelf life? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, because, when I started looking into all this stuff back in, turn of the century, that sounds old. It makes you sound really old when you go, back in the turn of the century. I, like everything else, I think there's a bell curve, and if I think back to my lifetime, you've gone, TQM, business process reengineering, CRM leading up to customer experience, and the way I see it is these things are getting absorbed into the way that organizations do business. And if you then start to look at, COVID being an accelerant, et cetera, I think that we're starting to get to a point where, and there's a phrase that I really like that I did a podcast on this a couple of weeks ago, which is customer science. Okay, so this sort of falls along the lines that we were just talking about, really, and this sort of more sort of data approach. So my view personally is customer experience is somewhere coming down the other side in terms of an overall discipline, right? So what's emerging? What's the next wave? And I think that you've got a sort of a perfect storm coming between artificial intelligence and all the technology that brings, data and big data, and therefore all of the information that we've got, and then the interpretation of that data through behavioral science. So the whole area of psychology, understanding what people really do, and therefore being able to anticipate and predict what the customer is going to do through the use of data. Okay, so at the moment, one of the companies that are doing this is Amazon. So if you look at Amazon, they know what I buy, they know the food I buy because I've got an Echo Dot. They know when I go to bed, they know because I've got a Ringo on the door, they know how many people visit my house, they know the type of music that I play, they know what I watch on television. And all of these are data points that enable them to come up with a profile of me, okay? And this is more of a psychometric profile than just the segmentation, because my view, most company segmentation is awful, particularly in the business space. They say, I've got big customers, I've got small customers, and I've got medium-sized customers. So I guess without me spending the next 4 hours on this, because I get quite excited about this, you get in this sort of fusion of AI, data, and behavioral science. And I think those three things come together to enable us to provide and anticipate customers' needs much more, particularly in the digital experiences that we provide. And all of that I would put under a banner of customer science, basically.
Excellent. So let's go to Joe. Joe, what do you think is next?
Well, there's anything you can predict as next is already here in some way, right? And I think if I'll just stick to sort of the post-COVID environment, that two things I think that it has accelerated, not caused, but accelerated is one, of course, is the shift from physical to digital experiences, but where the real answer lies in the fusion of the two. To have experiences that fuse the real and the virtual, I think is where we're going to head. I talk with companies about Twitchification. That if you think about what Twitch does, right? They take this digital experience and they film it and then and then show it to others. All these esports. But then the key experience of Twitch is actually all the social interactions that people have looking at the entertainment of somebody playing a video game. And we see that here. I mean, even rudimentarily here, where you've got the chat going with all the questions coming out that we can look at, we can see, and there will be people that get more value out of what they read in the chat than out of anything that we say. And you amp that up with all the possibilities of what Twitch and other mechanisms can provide. And I think you increasingly see that fewer people will go to a live event, whether it's a conference or a festival or a concert or whatever it may be. But then many more, an order of magnitude or two potentially, will be online at the same time watching the live event, but then talking to each other and having an even better overall experience, although you miss out on the being there factor. And then yet another set will be able to watch it filmed, and edited later, for another admission fee and so forth. This really amplification of that live experience. The other thing that I think that the Corona crisis is accelerating is the recognition among people that, and I don't want to say consumers here, I want to say people, that what we really value in life is meaning. That it's the meaningful experience that have. We sort of recognize, hey, we're at least in the first world, we're at peak stuff. We don't need more stuff. What we really value is those shared experiences we have with our loved ones, with our friends, even with our colleagues. And so we want more of those and less of all this other crap that's out there that sucks up our time, right? Again, if experiences are about time, we want to shift. We want to, one of the things like what Colin all said about what Amazon learns and other companies there is what I call genius platforms that they are creating, with AI and all the data and everything, is that it vastly saves us time. They just start doing stuff that we don't need. What do we do with that time, right? We spend that time on the experiences that we value, the meaningful experiences that again are increasingly what we seek and what we desire.
Excellent, thank you for that. And I see some lovely comments coming through in the chat. We will save the chat and send it to all of you so that we don't lose the comments in the chat. Thank you for your positivity and sharing. Lou, so let's hear from you, your thoughts.
Yes, I think that what we have to understand is that customer experience and experience management, whether it's customer or employee, is not a bolt-on. That it is a way of doing business. That it is a commitment that has to be embedded in the values of the organization. And I'm very, very impressed as we begin to look at the experience economy and begin to look at considering the total experience value. I'm very impressed by some of the work that's going on, Dr. Tom DeWitt, and to think about creating, and they're working on the creation of a master's degree in customer experience. This is so long overdue because what we're operating on is industrial age platforms, and we are living in a different era. And the era that we're living in now is what I refer to, and we're on the precipice of, and yet we've been doing work and creating tools for several decades that deal with what I call fusionomics and probably experience management 2.0. And that's a greater depth of knowledge of the science and art of experience, that experiences are no longer linear in any way, that it's like a pinball machine, and that what do we do to create consistency in terms of that emotional bond? And that responsibility is not siloed. We actually had a client that fused HR and marketing into a single department because they were in the restaurant business and realized the single greatest asset from a marketing perspective was their people. And I think we're entering into an era of virtuality, which is literally understanding how to humanize technology and how do we begin to understand the elements and the role of technology. The technology is not a replacement, and automation is not a replacement. In fact, the frustrations with some cable operator and spending 3 hours on chat and then talking to someone, it really is understanding human nature and human needs. The use of chatbots and so on. I think there's a delicate balance. The realization that product attributes, features, and benefits actually have less influence on consumer decision making than what they process unconsciously, emotionally, and from a sensory perspective of the total experience. And I think that that is incredibly important.
So I'm hearing a blend of kind of going back to basics, Lou, and really looking at, you know, kind of the deep emotions, Joe, the decluttering and almost the reprioritization that we're seeing just in human beings, you know, now looking at what's really, really important to them, and then blending that with the predictive science bit, Colin, that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Colin,
go for it, Lou.
I'm sorry, as Colin said, it's emotional behavior and its behavioral aspects of human beings. And that hasn't changed, that we're all still human. The world around us is changing, but there's still basic human needs that unconsciously we process experiences through this filter of the limbic pathways of the brain that actually create decisions before we even know we made the decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I'm noticing from many companies is, you know, if I look at how they prioritizing their customers over their employees, and the fact that humans are humans, and we need to design for both the customer and the employee. And the companies who have been so fixated on customer experience and customer journeys, they've really missed an opportunity to create more human-centered companies. And now some of the choices that leaders need to make are really, really hard choices. So I have a kind of a question, just much more on the practical side, and then we're going to open for audience questions. Madly, I'm just quickly checking in with you that there's questions coming through. You're able to kind of prioritize them. All right. So I want us to shift now into a very practical set of, you know, from your wisdom, drawing on your wisdom. If the folks who are on this call today, if they had to do 3 things, and one of those things need to be so practical that they can actually start doing it tomorrow, what would be your guidance in terms of, you know, the 3 things that people should be focusing on right now, the 3 practical things that they should be doing, how they should be prioritizing those things? And if you could give them one thing tomorrow when you get back to your kind of your desk, wherever that might be, you know, what are the things that people should be doing? And I'm going to give you an opportunity just to jump in. When you're ready, just start sharing.
Sorry, go on.
Go ahead, Joe.
The first thing for me, I'm going to repeat, is about the ROI. Because if you want to turn, if we go back to the title of this session, you know, turn it from sort of evolution to revolution, why would somebody support this? They will only support this if you can prove the ROI, okay? And as we know, all too often people shy away from that. And the bit that I would ask them to think about within there is things like lifetime value of the customer, all the costs involved. You know, we've never been involved in a implementation of customer experience that doesn't end up saving money, okay? Because there is huge cost by organizations in failures, in overlaps, in gaps, and everything else. And I think if you can start to identify the true ROI of your program, you're going to get a hell of a lot more support. It also will help you prioritize which thing you do first and which you don't. And again, ironically, all too often, organizations spend too much time looking at things that go wrong rather than the upside of, well, what's the opportunity, you know? So where do I spend my dollar? Do I spend it on fixing the things that are going wrong? Well, I can get X return for that. But you know what? There's an opportunity here. We spend $1 here, we actually get 10 times what we're going to get down here. So that would be certainly be my number one.
Thank you.
As I look at the construct of where we are and where we need to be and three things, I think there's an overarching piece that experience will never go away. I mean, it's what life is all about, is experiences. It's a collection of experiences, and experiences in its simplest definition is an impression. And what is amazing to me is that we're actually seeing in some industries shrinking of and elimination of CX positions. My question is why? And I think that what we've seen is a lot of whining because organizations are looking for ROI and what's the importance of this work, et cetera, et cetera. And I believe in something that I call return on strategy. And how do I accelerate the momentum and velocity of a strategy which will lead to ROI? And I think that is particularly critical. And so the three things that I would recommend are based on three ways of looking at the world. And I think it was a quote by William Arthur Ward that said that the pessimist complains about the wind in a sailboat. The optimist expects the wind to change, but the realist actually adjusts the sails. And it's time to adjust the sails. And the three things that I think are going to be critical and urge businesses to do now is to deepen their understanding of the new order and let go of industrial age thinking that looks at experience as service, but becoming customer driven and going beyond customer centricity. The second thing is focusing on knowing more about how customers think versus what they think. Opinion and the way that we actually formulate our understanding and delving into unconscious thought and emotions is critical. And lastly, it is adopting a vision of a return on strategy, creating experiential value, and that will result in an ROI. And I think that we need to become champions versus whiners or caught in a corner of, gee, no one really appreciates the work that's being done in customer experience. I have to convince people. It is literally building a culture that understands that the ultimate value they create is in the experiences that they create.
I'll say, I'll say mine will build on Lou's. Lou, I love your focus there on what I always call mindset. You know, you got to have the right mindset. And if you have that, then everything else can follow. And so the first thing that people can do, well, you don't even have to wait till tomorrow. They can do it while they're still on this, still with all us here. And that is to answer the question, what business are you really in? And recognize that you're in the experience business. That again, it's not services, it's not services plus. You know, as Lou keeps talking about, right? You're in the experience business, that business you're in. Now that's, you know, you may not be the head of the company. You may be down in some position, you know, focused on CX and that. But if you decided, then you can start to make an influence for that. And then if you do decide that as, yes, we're in the experience business, then the second thing and the logical conclusion then is to figure out how you can charge admission for your experiences. That economically, that's what turns a service into experience. That's what turns any economic offering into experience. If you charge for the time your customers spend with you, you know, through an admission fee, a membership fee, a per play fee, a per period fee, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And so a company should always ask, like, what would we do differently if we charged admission? And because it's only when you charge admission that you create the wherewithal to create an experience worth having, you know, worth that admission fee, and it also sends a signal that this is an experience worth having, and that's you know, crucially important. And then the third thing I'll say is to understand too that because experiences happen inside of us, right? It's our reaction to those events that are staged in front of us. That there's not enough focus still yet on customizing to the individual customer, part of that customer centricity to customer driven to customization, to understand that if you customize your goods, your services, and your experiences, then you'll engage people much more fully. You'll do things for them individually. That too much of experience design is still really a mass experience rather than recognizing that they're inherently personal because they happen inside of us.
Absolutely. And if I look at the tried and tested methods and the framework, Lou, if I look at your work around the motif and closing the brand canyon, and Colin, I look at your work around, you know, moment mapping. I really think this is a real call for all of us to go back to basics. We've been given this opportunity to almost press that reset button, and Lou, I love your metaphor of adjusting our sails, and really now paying attention to the mechanics, to humanics. And I think aside from if I look at you know, Lou's conviction, and you know, you've got to believe this stuff, and Colin's mathematics and the accounting piece in between, you know, getting the action and believing it. I do think there's a piece that I've certainly seen lacking in many of our clients around discipline, that this takes discipline and it takes a commitment. There is the science, there's the art, and there's a little bit of magic, but it takes discipline. And this is not difficult. It's not difficult to do, but it's hard because it takes discipline to actually see the results, to track the results. And I think this is a call to all of us to not get stuck in, you know, fixing things, but really looking at what are the disciplines required to redesign what we're trying to do, and to go back to. Yeah,
sorry, Chantel. So one thing that I would not take issue with you, but I would change a little, is rather than go back to the basics, okay, I think you need to go back to the basics with an enhancement, okay? And one of the things that you're getting from all three of us here is the fact that a customer experience is not just rational, right? It's about how a customer feels, and it's about the psychology or the, you know, behavioral science that goes behind that, all right? So let me just tie this back into what you're saying about the moment mapping piece. So journey mapping, pretty basic, you know, a good tool. But how many organizations are looking at their customer journey from a rational perspective? This is what my customer's doing. From an emotional perspective, this is what my customer's feeling like. And what are the psychological, Lou would call them, clues that we are getting and that we want to put in there? And how do we understand that behavioral science part that, you know, customers will tell you one thing and they will do another? So, you know, great example I've always had of that is Disney know that when they ask people what they want to eat at a theme park, Disney know that people say they'd like to have an option of a salad. Disney also know that people don't eat salads when they go to theme parks. They eat hot dogs and hamburgers. So fill the park full of salads, you're not going to make any money. In fact, you're going to lose money because they're all going to go off. Okay, so that for me, the important part of that is all three of us are saying is you got to understand human behavior and understand that it's inside, the experience is inside of you, and that is not necessarily logical. And the way that you interpret, therefore, the data and how to design your experience may not just be a logical, rational thought.
Hashtag exactly.
Yeah, Colin, it's so fascinating because this whole idea of being a visionary, and those without vision will perish. I absolutely believe that. And in my early career, I had the opportunity to work with folks at Disney during the construction of Epcot Center. And
you're showing your age now, mate.
The last Imagineer that Disney hired just passed away, George McGinnis, who was a very dear friend, and when I was a journalist, I actually got to interview him. And the great story was Dick Nunis, the president of Disney, standing in the swamps in Orlando, where they had just purchased all this land, and Walt is looking off into the distance. And he says, I picture a lake here. Well, they're all looking behind him where there was already a lagoon. But he said, no, 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 we're going to fill that in, and we're going to create the lake so that it actually makes an impression, that it isn't happenstance, that it's designed specifically to create this connection unconsciously. I just think that the power of what some people knew instinctively, jobs, and yet everyone wants to be an Apple. Everyone wants to be a Disney, but you've got to let go of legacy thinking that comes out of the industrial age to do it.
Fill in the lagoon.
All right, thank you for that, Colin. I'm going to now ask Madeline to start giving us some questions from the audience that she's received through Menti. And if you haven't put questions in Menti yet, let's just see how we're doing on the questions. So there's plenty of questions. All right, Madeline, I'm going to hand over to you. And if a question is directed to a specific person, if you could just name them. Otherwise, let's open up and whoever wants to grab the question can take it.
So we've got many, but let's start with Colin. On your last comment, Colin, you said, let me just get this. Oh, where's the last one? Sorry, I just had it.
No worries.
Oh, okay. Let me go back to this one. Sorry. Okay. So I'll get back to that one. But
sure.
Basically, there's a question. There's lots of questions about legacy companies. So how to address certain things in legacy companies. So I'll ask this one. You rightly mentioned in your book that emotions are literally the drivers for CX, but in legacy firms, the management tend to rely so much more on historical data than new trends. How do we overcome this?
So that for me, if that's, I don't know if that's directed at me, but so that for me, you got to show them the numbers. This goes back to my story of earlier. You know, what we know is that most organizations are, you know, senior people are older. Okay, simple as that. And how have they got there? They got there by being good at the things that they do. So you've got to show them some numbers. You've got to prove that this stuff works, unless you've got a visionary there. Okay, and in my experience, most organizations don't have that. So you've got to give them some data. You've got to run some experiments or some you know some experiments. Try it out, some pilots. and you've got to prove the data. You've got to do research, and you've got to provide them with the data. So this goes back to, you know, the conversation we were having where people said to us, show me that emotions work, and we couldn't. So we spent 2 years looking for which emotions drive value. And this came out in see this wonderful white book up here, DNA of Customer Experience, How Emotions Drive Value. Okay, because that's 2 years worth of research with London Business School, where you can statistically show by evoking certain emotions, they will drive value. That gets the CEOs and CFOs' attention. So you've got to prove it.
In fact, Colin, that question of the economic value of experience and emotion, you're probably familiar with Jag Seth at Emory, and they wrote the book Firms of Endearment. And they compared good to great firms to firms of endearment. And the question in Firms of Endearment was, name a company that if it went away tomorrow, you would mourn the loss of, or your life would be changed. And the good to great firms were outperformed in terms of financial performance. I think it was about 1,518%. They outperformed the good to great firms because of that emotional bond over a 15-year period. And I think it's the numbers, and then I think the second piece is until you experience it. There's a thing that we do, which is a clue scanning workshop, where we'll take senior executives and have them see how haphazard the experiences are. And it's almost overnight, a CEO will say, we need to allocate more resources. There are times I've thought I was going to be fired after one of those. When someone left the room and he said, I'm reorganizing departments tomorrow. But until you experience it yourself, you're so divorced as senior leadership that you think every experience is the experience that you get, almost.
Sure.
Very, very interesting. But it's the fusion of that economic factor and understanding where I am in terms of managing that emotional connection.
So the next question is to Joe. What is the future of work, and how will CX discipline align with the new way work is being done?
Just a small question there, Joe.
Yeah. The entire future of work in 30 seconds or less. Obviously, more and more professional work is going to be done from home. People have figured out that, hey, you can be really productive. I was still way back when one of, if not the first telecommuter at IBM back in 1991. And I couldn't believe how much more productive I was working from home than going into the office. But what it means, though, is that you need to really create the human bonds it takes to work with other people. You know, no worker is an island, and you still need to affect those. And so you need to actually have a great employee experience that takes that into account. One of the things we really haven't talked about today, and something that I haven't written anything about until earlier this year, but I've long recognized that if you want a great experience for your customers, that you have to give your employees the wherewithal to be able to do that. And you need to create a great experience for them. And here I'll also raise one thing, that is, as Lou Will knows from his Disney experience in that, one of the key things about any experience is that you have an organizing principle, right? And in Disney and elsewhere, it's called a theme. And the theme is the organizing principle. It's what allows you to make sure you have a cohesive experience that hangs together. Well, you take that organizing principle up a level or two and apply it to the entire company or organization, and what you really have is a purpose, and a meaningful purpose. And I think that we need to have that employee experience built around the meaningful purpose of the organization that allows everybody to align together and align what gives their own lives meaning at work with what the purpose of the organization is. And that's when great things can happen, because everybody is aligned together. You don't have to micromanage them. You don't have to command and control. You can then enable, basically unleash them to do what they do best. And that's the future of work.
Yeah, and it sounds like a bit of more trusting people a little bit more, right? So that leads us to a question for Lou. Lou, somebody's saying here that speaks to the employee experience and saying that, you know, their company is selling customer experience and customer service as one of their main benefits, but it doesn't reflect internally. What can they do about that?
Yes, the reason that we name the company Experience Engineering and not Customer Experience Engineering is that there are so many experiences. There are even marriage and relationship experiences that are unconscious and clues that we perceive.
You engineer that marriage experience with your wife, Lou?
You have to be careful. I have to watch what clues I point out.
I've had to journey map mine.
But it is so critical to understand that the world is built around experiences, and business is no different. And employee experiences, work that we did with John Deere on a global basis was written up in Jen and Chip Heath's book, Moments That Matter. And that was all about the employee experience, designed by a team of what were ambassadors, brand ambassadors from all over the globe, in terms of designing a number of elements in an employee experience. The one that was written up in the book was the first day experience and its effect on churn and the return on investment in lowering churn. So I believe that we have to become experts in experience management and the value of experiences, and then apply that in multiple ways. But be cautious in terms of journey mapping our relationships with our wives and partners and clue scanning those. It's dangerous territory. We usually issue a warning before a clue scanning workshop. Do not go home and try this on your own, within your home.
I obviously haven't attended one of your workshops, mate, and didn't realise I was meant to be doing that.
If I can just quickly add one of the comments in the chat, I think it was Rachel talking about leadership. And I think that leadership experience and really, you know, looking at, you know, the leadership crisis that the world is experiencing right now, and almost redesigning that leadership experience to move from command and control to, you know, a much more collaborative, open workplace where people are trusted more.
Absolutely. The clues and signals just of the president riding around in the back of a vehicle. I mean, we are clue conscious. We watch these things and then we interpret them unconsciously, and it's our mindset that takes that. And I think that we're much more clue conscious today than probably ever before with COVID and all of these other things that are happening. So I think the potential for change is huge.
Miley, I think we have time for one more question. And what we will do, if your question didn't get answered, we will go through those questions and find the best way to get some answers to you. So Miley, let's do one more and then we're going to start closing.
Just because I gave Joe such a hard question, I'll give him an easy question now. So Joe, out of all of the books behind you, the ones that you've not written, which one would you recommend to everybody here?
Well, I'll one, there's so many, right? There's so many, and I'll have present company excluded as well. But so I'll reach over and pick this one, which is Brenda Laurel's Computers is Theater. Right? We talk about in the experience economy that work is theater, and since we're doing so much more digitally today, it's important to understand that computers are theater. That Brenda Laurel makes the case that she says, think of the computer not as a tool, but as a medium, right? It's a medium for experiences. And she quotes Donald Norman in here, who coined the term UX, as saying, drama has always considered the multiple dimensions of experience, including one almost completely absent from the vocabulary of product and system designers from computer design, time. Again, it's the importance of time. What you do with any experience is you're designing the time that customers spend in that experience. And it's important to do that digitally with all our interactions as well as physically.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Great question.
Right, excellent. So I want to be respectful towards your time, and we said we're going to give some prizes at the end of the session. So now I'm going to ask Johan to take the spotlights off our different speakers, and you want to grab a piece of paper and a pen for the next exercise. So we're going to end off with something a little bit more creative, and you are going to design an experience for the authors that spoke today. So I'm going to start with Colin. Let's start with you. And what everyone wants to do now is you want to put your screen on gallery view. All right. So Colin's going to give you an activity to do. And you're going to take your pen and paper. I just want to quickly ask Johan to put on gallery view so that we can see everyone. Fantastic. All right. So there's quite a number of people on this call right now. So Colin, in order to pick a winner, you might need to scroll. So let me brief them. Colin's going to give you.
I'm already scrolling.
Excellent. Colin's going to give you an animal to draw, and you're going to draw that animal in 5 seconds. So unfortunately, your camera needs to be on. You're going to draw that animal in 5 seconds. Colin's going to say the name of the animal. I'm going to count, and when your time's up, you need to put your pen down and hold up your picture to your camera so that Colin can choose a winner. When Colin's picked a winner, I'm going to ask that winner to just stay on until the end, or just put your details for us in the chat so that we don't lose you, and we will communicate with you on how we're going to get the book to you. All right, everybody ready? Colin, you've got your animal?
I have.
Fantastic, and go for it, and I'm going to count.
A giraffe.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and pens down. All right, and hold up your animal to the screen. And Colin, I'm going to give you some time to scroll through and pick something that looks like a wonderful experience to you.
Caroline Park.
Excellent. Caroline, and you're going to make sure that we have your details, and you can pick one of Colin's books, which we will get you a Kindle version of. All right, so let's go to Joe next. Joe, you ready? And your sound is muted, Joe.
Yes, I'll say a moose.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pens down and hold up your moose. And Joe, I'm going to give you some time to scroll, pick a moose winner.
I like the one who said no idea. Ooh. Ooh, there's a good one. All right, I'm going to have to go with Patrick Fitzgerald.
Excellent. Congratulations, Patrick. All right, and now we get to Lou. Lou, you've got your animal?
I do. A dog.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And hold up your dogs. All right, and I'm going to give Lou some chance to just scroll.
Let's see. Rachel Dreyfuss.
Oh, Rachel, that's very creative, very creative. Congratulations, Rachel. Excellent. All right. So I'm going to ask Marilee, can you pick an animal for someone to get a copy of my book?
I see people are saying it's so unfair, this challenge, so I'll make it very easy. Let's do a cat.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and pens down, and hold up your cat. Marilee, scroll.
Let's do Janet Leander.
Oh, fantastic, Janet. And you guys will make sure that we've got your details. And then I'm going to give away a ticket to our 5-day Journey Architect program in November. And I do hope the time zone works for you. So I'm going to ask for a zebra. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 10's down. And I'm going to ask your hand to scroll for me. Oh, wow, you've done such a stunning, stunning, stunning job. Look at that. Look at that. Whoa. That is amazing. And I'm seeing Erin Salmon, your zebra caught my attention the first. So Erin, where are you based? I'm hoping this time zone is going to work for you, but please stay on and we can definitely chat. So what's left for me to do is say thank you for your time. I hope that this hour and a half was for you as meaningful as it was for me, spending time with each other, connecting with each other, and hearing the wisdom from the people that I absolutely admire. So I'm going to bid you goodbye. If you want to stay on a little bit, and if you want to maybe just have a closing comment, Lou, Colin, Joe, can I give you an opportunity just to make a closing comment?
I'd like to thank everyone who joined us. Joe, Colin, Chantel, it's always a pleasure to be with you all. The respect and admiration I have for each of you and friendship that I value, that I'm so grateful for. And thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And thank you for joining us. May God bless you all, keep you safe and healthy as we face some of the most trying times in our lifetime.
Yeah, and for me, I'd like to thank Chantel and the team for putting this together. It's been really good being with Joe and Lou. You know, we've been together a number of years now, seeing each other and everything else. It's really good. And I guess the message for me, for everybody out there, is everybody that's been listening to this today is undoubtedly believers, and we face talking to unbelievers all the time. So just keep the faith. If you keep going, I believe passionately in tenacity. Just keep going, you know, eventually you knock down the doors and you'll win. So thank you very much, everybody. And thanks, Chantel and the team.
The first time, I think it was the first time Lou and Colin and I were together personally, was in a jazz bar in Chicago smoking cigars. And the conversation today was almost as good as that.
The cigars were missing, though.
We're a bit more socially distanced, though.
That's right. That's the problem.
So I was actually going to have some red wine delivered to your house and to Lou's house, and then I realized it's morning, so we cannot possibly be opening red wine and smoking cigars, but I'm sure we can find a time that we can actually do that. So thank you so much for your time. That's a wrap. We will be sending you an email with the video recording of this, as well as the links to the various books, and stay in touch. Joe and Colin and Lou post things on LinkedIn, so follow them. And I hope that we get this opportunity to get together again in future. All right, if I can just ask the winners to just stay on so that we can grab your details. Go well, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Join the CX Day activities throughout the day tomorrow. There'll be lots of sessions. We also have another workshop, and thank you for the people from Kenya. I believe they're having a few really interesting CX Day celebrations and Customer Service Week celebrations. So a lot of blessings on the work that's happening this week, and carry on the flying the flag of CX. Thanks, everyone.